All right, we're recording.
Okay, episode number 29. This time we're going to interview the great Greeley superstar, Anthony J. Tortora III.
Love it.
2015 grad, 2013
Five.
grad. Oh, 2005, I'm sorry.
Oh, man, this is went off the
2005.
rails early.
Okay, but let me check my notes. Hold on.
You give this guy power, and he goes crazy. We should have Marino do the intro. I've always been
All right, let's start over. Go ahead, Anthony, do the intro. Go.
All right, so we are here with Anthony Tortora and Mike DeBellis, coaches of Horace Greeley Wrestling. Anthony is a 2005 graduate of Horace Greeley High School, an all-around good kid who I had in class, a legend in the hallways of Horace Greeley, a two-time section champ, and a state placer, fourth place in his junior year of high school wrestling.
Marino's the man.
Tortora then went on to wrestle at Hofstra University, and he is now back, which I think is very special to have a person from the original place come back home and coach. I think that's a very special thing. Welcome, Coach Tortora.
Thank you. That was an unbelievable intro to my co-host, Anthony Marino.
Oh, that's terrible. Come on.
All right.
One intro.
2015, you thought I graduated 5 years ago? I've been coaching with you for 10.
Yeah, I just, the time is, it's a human construct. I don't know.
Okay.
All right, anyway, so we're going to start the interview with the age-old question. Mr. Anthony J., what inspired you to wrestle?
If people have been watching these, Sean actually turned the tables on us a little bit at the end of his interview and asked us the same question, but that was pretty deep into the interview. Basically, when I moved, my family lived in Yonkers until I was like 9 or 10. We moved up to Chappaqua. We were in Roaring Brook, and they handed out those after-school Richmond books or whatever, where you could do like, volleyball, soccer, whatever it was, arts and crafts, and they had wrestling. And at the time, I was a really, really like insanely big fan of WWF, I guess WWE now. So when I saw it,
Who was your favorite wrestler?
I really liked Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels.
Wow, there was a big documentary called The Other Side or something.
It was about them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of over it now. But if I put the channels on, I might watch for a second. But I don't know who's who anymore or what's going on really. But yeah, so I could have sworn it was going to be like we were in the ring with turnbuckles, and I was going to be hitting somebody with a steel chair. And I saw that thing, and I begged my mom. I begged her. I'm like, Mom, can I please do wrestling? Can I please do wrestling? She's like, yeah, sure. So we went to, I think it was in the Roaring Brook like auditorium, and they had those like mats that you could peel off the wall kind of thing. And we were just like doing a little rolling around, and I ended up getting the better of most of the kids there. And Ken Clay at the time was like, you should come to youth wrestling. And, that was third grade or so, and been there ever since.
Very cool. So you mentioned your family. You moved from Yonkers. You came up to Chappaqua.
Mm-hmm.
I know you are a big family person. You can see it when you're, the support you get from your family. I had both your sisters. Well, your older sister, just for a little bit. I remember her playing field hockey at school. Your younger sister I had in class, as well as you. And your dad is always very supportive and at the wrestling events, even when you were not even in school, he'd come back to some. So tell me a little bit about what your family means to you and that support they gave you as you were growing up and led you wrestling and all that stuff.
Awesome. Yeah. Do you guys hear that echo?
Echo?
Oh, I heard it for a second. It was echoing my voice. It's weird. Yeah, we're really close. Obviously, as Coach Marino said, like I speak to my intermediate family every day, whether it's my mom, my dad, and my sisters. I think my parents brought us up in that sense where, family comes first. Even if, like Greg talked about in his interview about like selfishness and stuff, like sometimes I had to miss family things for wrestling stuff and practice and things of that nature. But we could go on and on about the things my dad did for me with wrestling. My whole family was supportive, but my dad would take me anywhere around the country, and he never missed anything. Literally, the one thing he missed, I was in college, and we were wrestling at the NC State Wolfpack Open, and he made believe he got into a car accident at the airport because he was having chest pains and had to go to the hospital and didn't want me to get all jammed up that he was having chest pains. So he made believe he got in a car accident at the airport because he literally, like when we were in Vegas, he was there. When we were in Iowa, he was there. Everywhere. And then, my mom, same thing. Like I love my mom to death. I'm a mama's boy for sure. But you know, she's a little scared of wrestling. But she would come to the big stuff and the important stuff, and would be super supportive. And my sisters, you know, we're super close. My older sister, there's a video that John actually did, a highlight video of my junior year in high school. And like John actually did a really good job. And it's me in the section finals. And then whoever was videotaping panned to Tatiana, and she was like teary eyed because she was nervous I was going to lose. Like it was a 1-point match. So like, you know, we're really close. And because of that, I'm really close to my sister's kids, and, you know, they're in youth wrestling and stuff. So we have a great relationship.
Yep.
Excellent.
So, Coach, you decided to come back. I mean, you had a great high school career. You held the all-time wins lead for a while, right? Before Greg, for a couple days.
Yeah, for like maybe a year.
Yeah, for a year. So you had 116 wins or something like that in high school. 108. 105 wins. Exactly what my notes say right here. 105 wins.
Wait, to my defense, though, I was out for 3 weeks my senior year.
I would also like to add too, and I said it when I was coaching, it's very hard for kids in our school. I don't think they wrestled as many matches.
No.
And we don't have where middle schoolers are allowed to come up like every other school in the state. So a lot of kids who would get that experience in the lightweight weight classes and just move up gradually as they grow, that's not there really. So anyone who's got 100 wins at Horace Greeley, you know, that's pretty good.
Especially before our time.
200
I was going to say, it changed in our time, too.
Because we go to 35, you know, they could potentially get 40 wins.
My senior year, I was 23-2. Like, you know, so I didn't have many matches. It didn't really help. But
you were good enough to wrestle in 7th and 8th grade, probably on the varsity level, because you were doing it since 3rd grade.
Yeah.
You did youth.
No, not to sound like a jerk, but I was going to the club and beating plenty of people that were wrestling varsity at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you feel like at that time you should have been wrestling on the varsity?
Yeah, it bothered me a lot because.
Why was it that you couldn't wrestle on the varsity? I know the school didn't adopt the
classification. Yeah, it would allow me, but it might have been you, Coach Marino, or it could have been Tribo. I was at the point where, like, people in the district knew. Actually, it couldn't have been you yet, Coach Marino, because you came over the 9th or 10th grader. So I think it was Tribo. People knew that I was pretty good at wrestling. Like, it was a thing. And I wanted to wrestle at Empire State Games. Right. So I had to take the test still to be allowed to wrestle at Empire State Games. So 7th and 8th grade, I went to like the high school version of Empire State Game qualifiers. And my 8th grade year, I took 3rd. So I was set one way from making the games. And I beat plenty of kids that were, you know, all section and section qualifiers. Like, 106, 8th grade.
So you would have been, you know, 99, or what was the weight class?
I probably would have been 103. It was 96, 103. Like I had to pull down to get to 106. It wasn't easy. So I probably would have been maybe 103 or maybe even 112. But I broke my wrist my 8th grade year wrestling with this kid, Mike Smith, who took 3rd in the section from Mayapack. And I'll never forget because we were doing best out of 5 takedowns and it was 2-2. You know, and he took a shot for the 3rd one, and I went to block, and my hand snapped back, and I broke my wrist. So I mean, that kid took 3rd in the section that year. I'm not saying I would have beat him, but we were definitely very close. You know.
Yeah. So freshman year.
Would you say that the wrestling at that middle school level, as you were trying out for the version of the Empire State Games, what would you say was like your aha moment where you realized, you know, because you didn't wrestle in high school yet, but you were wrestling those kids. Would you say that's when you knew, like, I have the confidence that I got this?
Yeah,
and I'm going to be fine.
I mean, to me, like, I always loved wrestling, even when I was a 3rd grader. I'm not going to say I was that guy. Like, we had some people on here like Nikki and some other people that had struggled a lot in youth, which is perfectly fine because it's not a sprint, it's a marathon kind of thing, right? Like youth wrestling, listen, I'm really happy for kids that do well in youth, but it really doesn't mean anything. It should be an experience of having more fun and loving the sport. But I was more successful than not successful. I wasn't winning every tournament, but I was in the finals of a lot of them. Like, I was just a tough, scrappy kid just by nature. And but I didn't know like what real wrestling was until I hit like 7th grade and I started going to the club and started going to now Empire, but at the time it was Iowa Style, because there was a lot of really good high school guys that I was wrestling with, or a lot of good 7th and 8th graders that were wrestling varsity at the time already. So they were already in that world. And when I first got in there, I loved wrestling so much that I probably was a step behind, but I was very determined to catch them really quick. And by the summer of my 7th grade year, or even the spring of my 7th grade year, I was on par with a lot of 99 and 106 pounders in the section probably.
Did you go to the section tournament? Did you go
Every
to
year, I
watch?
knew everybody. I knew everybody really well. Like I knew everybody who and we talked about this with the interviews. Like I think if I was a high school kid right now, I would have watched all 28 of these probably twice. I knew who everybody was. I knew, like, I had guys a lot of them I looked up to. At that time, Coach, when I was an 8th grader, I don't know if Coach Marino knows him. He might, but DeBellis, you definitely do because you worked with him even.
Pat McCabe.
No, not Pat. Pat's a year younger than me. Joe Mazurko was a senior in high school when I was an 8th grader. So when I first started the club, he was like he was the big name guy in Section 1, and he was at John's at the club. So I would watch him, and I would want to be like him. And I would, my dad, going back to what Marino said with family, every year, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 3 years I didn't go to the 4 or 5 years I didn't go to States. Every year we would drive up to Syracuse and watch the States. So I was always like, rooting on guys like, Joe Mazurko and Michael Giovanni. And really it was a lot of Mayapack guys because they were big in the club and Mayapack was really good at the time.
And Joe Mazurko had somebody to look up to too. He had a brother, Anthony and Phil, who were tremendous wrestlers.
Yep.
When I was in school. Well, Anthony was a year younger than me. I wrestled him when he was at Manhattan. And Phil was a couple years older, and he was a stud. He was great wrestlers.
Good people too. That was very nice.
Great people. I mean, Mayapack and Carmel didn't get along, but I always got along with the Mazurkos.
Well, that's a great, and somebody, I don't know if Coach Marino mentioned in an interview, or somebody was saying about we've talked about somebody being above you kind of thing. Joe was approachable when I was an 8th grader and he was a senior, and it was really important. Like he was worried about him, but at the end of practice, if he saw me drilling, he saw I was having trouble with something, he would just, without me saying anything, come up and help me. And, to me, that gave me, I don't want to use the word positive vibe. I don't know what a good word is for that, but it made me feel good. Like, this guy's great. This guy's a superstar, and he's okay with working with me, who really is nothing right now.
You feel that lended itself to you and how you approached
for sure. I mean, not to go too far in advance, but there was my senior year at the club. Greg and those guys were coming up. Greg would have a really good year the next year. My senior year, me and Mike Kugler were the two probably biggest names in the club at the time. Mike Kugler from Fox Lane. Yeah, and that year Mike Kugler took second in the state at 140, and I was ranked second in the state the whole year at 145. So but I blew it. But we were training with each other, and me and Mike were very close, but Mike had a very tough personality where the kids would not ask him a question. Mike loved me. Mike would do anything for me, but the kids would ask me. And other kids said that back in the day, like, oh, we used to be scared to go up to Mike, but we would go talk to you. But me and Mike were like two peas in the pod when we were together. It was just, I had a little bit of a different approach, I would say.
So not to jump too far ahead, but when did you realize then that you wanted to coach? Or it was just one of the things that you did?
I think it was just one of the things I did. I mean, if you asked me then, I probably would have said, yeah, I would like to coach eventually, just because I love wrestling, right? At that time, I probably couldn't see myself not wrestling. So what do you do after college? Eventually there's coaching. Like how,
there's not much of a career.
That's what I'm saying. So I think I would have wanted to stay involved in it because I liked it that much, but I don't think I had any idea that I would be doing what I'm doing, if that makes sense.
So when you were in high school,
mm-hmm.
and your teammates and the teams you had, what was your experience with your team and your coaches at the time, and how did that help you further get into college and achieve college wrestling status?
Well, I mean, I think Coach Kaleo kind of has got a bad rap on some of these interviews when he really wasn't a bad guy. Towards the end, I think we had our differences, but when I first started as a 3rd grader, he invested a lot into me. Like he really, I guess, saw something in me that he thought was good. And, he would come to a lot of the tournaments around the state with me and my dad and things of that nature. Really, we were so close. My 6th grade year, I was the ring bearer in his wedding, so we were very close. And he kind of helped me get the love of wrestling for sure. I really think he had a lot to do with that. We would do like that East Coast wrestling trip where we'd go down the East Coast and wrestle in a bunch of states and stay with kids from South Carolina, North Carolina, and all this cool stuff. And that's how I met Danny Hall on one of those trips. And, Danny was one of the guys I looked up to as well when I was in high school. And I got to high school and my freshman year really was really, really bad. There was like 9 guys on the team. There was one senior, this kid, John Clark, that was decent, a couple-time qualifier. but never all section. And me and him would go together. Me and him were like pretty even. And he was a senior and I was a freshman. And I think I kind of started to turn like the culture around a little bit, maybe. I would like to think. Because when I was an 8th grader, Greg was a 7th grader. And that's when Greg started getting the bug. And I started making Greg come up to the club with me and do those things. And I think it became kind of contagious with certain kids. Because my senior year, we were like 5th or 4th in the section, a lot on mine and Greg's and Burke's backs, but we had a full dual meet team, and we had some guys that could go out there and compete pretty well. But that's at the time when me and Cleo started kind of not seeing eye to eye anymore.
So your freshman year, you came out. Were you successful right off the bat? 20 wins that year? Or?
Yeah, like you said, we didn't wrestle as much, so I was 20-9 my freshman year.
Hey, it's in my notes.
So I remember like my first dual meet. I'll never forget it. It was against Brewster. It was this kid, Jesse Capos Electro or whatever, who I still randomly will talk to here and there.
Jesse?
Yeah.
I don't know.
But he ended up being pretty good. He ended up being like a couple-time all-section guy, and he went to the club and everything. But at that time, we didn't know each other. And I headlocked him in like the first period and pinned him. And
first match out, you pinned the guy?
Yeah.
And you pinned the guy that was older than you?
No, he was a freshman like me.
Oh, he was a freshman. Okay.
Yeah.
Who was the coach? Amuso?
Brewster? I think it was Luby still. I think it was already Luby. Or Luby was their coach while I was in high school, for sure.
He might have been, but he was the assistant because Joe Amuso was the coach.
So it might have been Coach Amuso and then Luby by the time I was a senior or something. But because Luby would bring guys – well, maybe he was assistant, but Luby would bring guys to the club. I remember that, and I would wrestle.
He was the Maypac guy.
I don't remember. But anyway, I pinned him. I had some success. I'll never forget, I was in the quarters. I won first round of sectionals. I was in the quarters, and I got the crap kicked out of me by some senior from Amerinac. I think it was like 15-2 or something like that. He wasn't very good. But I had no idea really what I was still doing. And I got bigger. I made a big jump. I was like 106 as an 8th grader. I was 125 as a freshman. So it was definitely different. I was growing into my body a little bit. And I remember John Deagle walking by, because that's the one year he coached Mayapack, my freshman year. I remember him walking by, and it was 15-2. And he's like, "You better not let him tech you." And I looked at him. I'm like, he's not going to tech me. And then he didn't tech me. But I still lost the match. So, I mean.
So you were saying that when you first came up as the 9th grade Urquhart, the team only had around 9 kids on it.
Yeah.
How did the kids treat you as a freshman on the team? Was there a wrestler that was pretty good? Was it pretty open that like, hey, this freshman, we see him as a threat? Or were they mean to you? Or were they, because I've seen it where kids get jealous, even though you're a different weight class, even though you might be helping the team, it's a threat to them and their position, even though it might not be.
That's a good question, but I don't think it was like, they all were very nice to me. And I think it had something to do with, by 7th, 8th grade, like with the Aarons of the world and Greg and, we all, that push to get me on varsity as a 7th grader started. So the varsity guys knew I was pretty good. Like they knew who I was, and they were excited that I was coming, kind of like, and I like to think that I carried myself in even when I was a kid, like a respectful, quieter type way. So I wasn't going in there, saying I'm the man, get out of my way. Like I would listen to the older kids on the team, and like I would like, I wasn't correct. Even if I thought somebody was doing something that I might not have really liked, I wasn't going to say, hey, that's not the right way to do it. I was a freshman. I knew my place. But I also think, like, not to sound like a jerk, but we had such a small team, and I could pretty much beat everybody on the team. So they really weren't going to say much. Like, I don't know what they really would have said to me, but I don't want to come off the wrong way. They were really supportive of me. Anytime I was on the mat, like, years after, they would come back and like, or reach out to me and see how I was doing and stuff of that nature.
So sophomore year, how'd we do?
Sophomore year was a lot better. Sophomore year, I went up to 130, which was we talked about that before. Like, weight cutting was different. 130 for me was a brutal cut. And, I was probably walking around at like 145 or so, and I was pretty skinny. And, but I got down. I went 29-4 that year.
Wow.
And I took 3rd in the section. And that was the last year it was combined. The section was combined. It was no big school, small school. And, I lost in the semifinals, and this is kind of where the Kaleo thing, and I don't mind talking about it because it's real, and I still think he's a good guy. He still reaches out to me here and there, but it's just, John Deagles is somebody that back then, was a hard guy for certain people to like in a way. I thought he was great. I loved him. My dad loved him. My dad saw what kind of heart he had and like what he did for kids. So my dad understood, right? But Kaleo wasn't there in the offseason, so he didn't really know him like we knew him in a sense. And I got to the semifinals. I wrestled this kid, Manny Castang, who was going for his third section title. He was going for his third one. And I'm a sophomore, my first time in the semis, and he was beating me up pretty good. Like he was a man.
How old was Manny?
That's funny that you say that because we've talked about this. But Manny was like 22 or 23 years old because he got arrested like 2 or 3 months after the season, and the police report came out, and it was like 22-year-old male from Ossining, Manny Castang or whatever. So he was 22 and I was 15. So I mean, it's not.
He shouldn't have been eligible to wrestle.
No,
period.
no. And so we wrestled, and he beat me up. He beat me 12-0. But I wasn't getting pinned or tagged. Forget that. And but that's when John and that's a difference. Like you see other clubs, you know. Everybody gave John a really bad rap, but I will give him the benefit of the doubt that he never came near the corner. He was never near the coaches. He was in the stands, but he projects when he talks and yells. So he was yelling because he wanted me to not get attacked or something like that. He wanted me to prove a point or something. He was yelling. And we go like out of bounds, and I looked up at him instead of looking at Kaleo. And at the time, we didn't have an assistant coach, or if we did have an assistant coach, he wasn't very much involved. I think that Plotkin was my freshman year. I don't think Plotkin was the assistant my sophomore. I don't know what the deal was my sophomore year. And Kaleo got up and left and walked off the mat.
During sectionals?
In the middle of the match, yeah. And I was always a good kid. I never was disrespectful to him. So it was tough. I didn't really care.
That was the semifinals versus Manny?
Yeah.
You were losing?
I got killed. It was 12-0. I don't know what the score exactly was at the time he walked away, but I got beat 12-0.
Were they running out of pizza? Why would he leave?
Because he was upset that I looked at John and not him.
And
yeah, so when he walked off, obviously I finished the match, and my dad was not too keen about that, so they had some words. And but it was weird because I think Kaleo really did love me as a kid, because then I came back, and that whole tournament was crazy. In the quarters, I won. I got a last-second takedown to get to the semis. Then I got beat up in the semis. He walked out. Conti semis, I hit a headlock to get a 5-point move to win by 2 with like 10 seconds left. And then for the third and fourth match, I beat this kid, Mark Horton, who was a returning section finalist. It was a tough weight. Everybody that placed that year other than me was a senior. And he was like 6'2", suffering kid. He escaped in the second. It was 1-0. I knew he was a beast on top. I picked neutral in the third, took him down, beat him 2-1. And at the end of that, Kaleo was like crying and hugging me, and we were happy again. And I think he didn't mean bad. I just think I don't know. I just think like John is so imposing that it was hard for him maybe to swallow that, because Kaleo was a very successful coach himself, and he was probably like, you know, but I don't know if he would ever talk about that, but I think if you brought that up to him now, I don't think he would be happy he did that.
Oh, no.
That's interesting.
Sure.
Because you said, you were in 10th grade that year.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody who placed above you was a senior, and one was apparently a senior in college. That's pretty impressive.
Everybody, fourth, fifth, and sixth were seniors too. Everybody, all top 6 were seniors except for me.
I can't believe that guy was 22 years old. And how?
I was just going to ask that. How did that happen?
Because he went to where? Where did he go to school?
Ossining.
See, I'm surprised Kaleo didn't pick up on that, because Kaleo was the Ossining coach forever. When I wrestled, Kaleo was at.
I think Kaleo was already at Greeley by the time I was a third grader, so he probably was already.
Who was the coach? Ternambi or Sal?
It might have been my sophomore year. It might have been Sal. Sal was at Mayapack my senior year, so I don't know if Sal was already at Mayapack.
Sal had to be there.
Ternambi was the coach my senior year at Ossining, because when I wrestled Matt Shakin, I wrestled an Ossining kid my senior year in the section finals. Ternambi was the coach, and then Sal was at Mayapack. I don't know if that transition had already happened. I don't remember. But it probably was.
I could almost guarantee you that was Sal's kid.
It was probably Sal. And me and Sal had a good relationship too. Like, you know, I remember in one interview we talked about Pete Valpone. Before I started doing club wrestling, like Pete Valpone, the Ardsley coach, and ended up now as the Yonkers coach, and Sal and Bimbo, who doesn't coach anymore, he just refs. Those guys were basically my off-season coaches. Yeah, we're not happy about that. No. But those are my off-season before I went to clubs. They had open mats at Ossining, they had open mats at Ardsley, and that's where I would go.
Even when I was a kid, both Kaleo and Sal was really big at the Empire State Games, and he was just, you know, he was.
Sal was great to me when I was a kid.
A lot of guys, you know, Sal's another one that's, you know, you could take. He's hard to deal with sometimes, but he's a great guy.
He's a good person. Yeah, he's
same
a good
with John. Same idea.
Yeah,
You
and
want those
Kaleo
guys
too.
on
I
your
don't want
team.
to. I don't want to make this a series of me throwing Kaleo under a bus. He did a lot of
No,
great
I
things
don't
for
think
me.
you did that at all. I think you
I'm
said
just
you
saying
were
he's done a lot of great things for me. But I think all three of those guys, Sal, John, Clay,
they're
all of
all the
them.
same.
Yeah, there's similarities there.
So
They're very
I'm
cartoonish.
gonna just ask one further question on this topic. The section or the state never came down and did anything, and like, hey, this was a mistake.
Coach, that's a good
This
point.
was
I don't know. I don't because he didn't place at states. So the
right.
school, so I don't know if that maybe like no coaches really caught fire of that. I don't know. But the kid that he beat in the section finals, I'm still friendly with to this day. Is this kid Mark Marinelli, who was he was like a 4-time runner up. So he like never won, but he was always on the edge. He was
What's
a
the
tough
team?
wrestler. And this is actually a funny story, and it's really true. My sophomore year, that same year, me and Mark wrestled in the division finals, and he beat me 4-1, but it was 2-1 late, and I was about to get the go-ahead takedown. And I'll never forget this, and this is not a disrespect to Mark. Mark was definitely better than me. The way he wrestled against Manny the next weekend showed he was better than me, but at that time. But maybe he was taking me a little bit lightly, and I could have scored that takedown and won 3-2. But I remember letting off the gas a little bit because I almost was weird about it because I looked up to him so much. I almost didn't want to do it. You know, it was weird. It was one of the only times I could think about as a wrestler where I kind of let off the gas, and then I kind of like folded, and he scored, and it was 4-1 because he was one of the guys I looked up to. So it was like I didn't feel right about it. And then the next week, I wrestled as hard as I could against Manny. He beat me 12-0 fair and square. Even though he was like 66 years old, he beat me 12-0. But Mark and Manny, that was like a 12-11 match. It was one of the best matches I've ever seen, and Mark had him on the ropes. So I think Mark knew in that match that he had to take it up to another level, and he did that. So fair game. Mark probably should have beat me anyways in the division finals, but he might have been sleeping for a second, and I think I could have got it. And I kind of was like, this is Mark Marinelli. He's one of my heroes.
So sophomore year, you're third in the section. That's legit.
Yeah, it was good.
And you guys are really the first group of guys that came through that were training full year. Because when I went to high school in '92, May and Pac used to do some off-season stuff, and that's why they were good. But nobody else was really doing off-season. We'd go to Empire State games. We'd all hit a camp over the summer, but we weren't training like where I think John made a big difference when he came in and he started saying, hey, well, you got to train all year, and that's now the norm if you want to be.
I played 3 sports though, Coach, up until 11th grade. I still wrestled. But I still wrestled year round. It wasn't like I wasn't doing both. So I would go to football practice, then to the late wrestling practice or something like that.
Then your academics.
Yeah, my academics could have been better probably though. And we could talk about that later. We can talk about that whole story too, how my academics improved. But I love playing football. It was fun. At the time, the varsity team was pretty good, but my class was not very good. And we continued to not be very good, I think, as we went through. But I started on both sides of the ball in football. Like I said, I don't think I was that good. I just think that I was tougher than a lot of the kids, and we weren't good. And lacrosse, I had a lot of fun with lacrosse. My freshman year, I was the leading scorer on the team. I was not good. I couldn't even really cradle the ball right. I was getting down the field, and I was just shooting them in, and it was working. But
was Kuzma the coach?
He was a varsity coach, so I didn't have him.
He was a very young coach.
Yeah, he was great though. He was really nice to me too back then. And but I'll never forget, there was a coach that will remain nameless. Very nice guy too. But it was my sophomore year, and this is when I kind of just canned all the other sports. I was all section, and I was going to go to the all section dinner. They did a dinner at that time and not a brunch, and it was weeknights. So it was like a Wednesday night at like 5 or 6 o'clock. And I remember at the time telling the JV lacrosse coach at the time that I had to miss practice, or I had to leave early, or whatever it was, because I had to go to the all section dinner. And that coach, and not in a mean way, but lacrosse was his thing, I guess. And maybe he didn't realize how serious wrestling was for me. And he's like, you got to make a commitment to this team. You shouldn't be missing practice. And for whatever reason, that just rubbed me the wrong way. And I just stopped, and I just started wrestling even harder and going to more practices. It's not like I sat at home. I was wrestling every day, and I was getting more practicing.
Was your dinner at the Colonial Terrace?
Yeah. You got a good memory, D.
It's in my notes. All right, so you go to your junior year. Coach, you got something?
I was just going to say, we're going to move on to the junior year.
Oh, yeah, let's go to the junior year. Now you're ranked first in the section. Is that true?
Yeah, they did different back then. It was me and this kid, John Hoke, who's a coach at North Rockland.
Yeah, great coach.
Great, and a great guy. I like him a lot.
Strength trainer, right?
strength trainer, has a great gym. JVH, I think it's called, in Rockland, but he does an unbelievable job. I follow him on Instagram and stuff. Their workouts are awesome. And really good guy with the kids. But he took third in the section the year before at 135, and I took third at 130. So we both jumped up to 140. For whatever reason, I think in a lot of the rankings I was first. I'm not really sure why. We both were returning third place finishers, and he was a way ahead of me.
Not to interrupt, but what were some of the big tournaments that you guys went to?
Really didn't go. We didn't go to that many.
You guys go to Super 16, the Somers
My
tournament?
senior year, I think we went to Super
Line.
16, but I was injured. That's when my knee was all banged up, so I didn't wrestle in that one. I'm trying to think what tough
Super
tournament.
16 is now the Westchester counties.
Yes. We went. The Somers tournament was a lot better when I was in high school, so that was like the one tough tournament on our schedule. Like St. Benedict's used to come, and they were a good prep school. But other than that, it was more dual meets and random tournaments. Like, not to like. I'm trying to think. Who did I lose to my junior year? I had 2 losses going into states, and one was the finals of Somers tournament where I was winning the match and I got headlocked and pinned. It was like only the 3rd time I got pinned in my whole career. So that was rough. I probably handled that worse than I would want any of our kids to handle that when I lost. I threw my 2nd place trophy in the garbage, and, I wasn't very happy about it. But, things happen. That definitely made me better for the rest of the season. And then I lost this kid, Sean LaFlock, who was 2nd in the section that year at 145, a weight higher than me. But he was a club member. And me and him wrestled the night before the duel meet, and I beat the crap out of him. I always beat the crap out of him. I was definitely better than him, and that's no offense to him. But again, it wasn't like I let off the gas like I did against Mark, but, butterflies or something. I don't know what it was. I got a quick takedown and I stopped wrestling, But, it is what it is. But those were the only 2 losses I had going into states my junior year. So.
All right, so you're ranked, and now you feel like you get to this, let's say the section tournament, the biggest tournament of the year. You're seeded first?
Yeah. Yep. So, yeah, I mean, I basically, at that point, my junior year, I would say that I was extremely bought in. I always was extremely bought in, but I was like taking things to the extreme where, same thing as a Jacob, like before school or my first period, maybe I would be on the treadmill in the gym and doing things like that. And, working really hard, staying after practice, going to John's right after practice, after dual meets, if I pin somebody quick. At that time, tech falls and pins counted for the same amount of points. So I actually, my junior year, and because this was a John thing, this is how he really was, but, he wanted us to stay out on the mat a little longer if we could. So my junior year, I had like 25 techs. I didn't pin really anybody because I didn't want to, and so that was kind of what was happening there. But, at that time, that's when I really started believing in everything that I was getting coached, where my sophomore year, I worked as hard as I could, but maybe I wasn't bought into all of those ideas. Like I brought my own food to tournaments. I would never sit in the gym. My dad went as far as getting me and Greg like walkie-talkies. So we'd be out in like a little like coved area, and he'd like walkie-talkie us and be like, "You're on double deck," and I'd get up and go warm up. I would bring change of clothes. I would shower after every one of my matches, just to refresh. I would do my warm up, my cool down, like I tell the kids to do now. I took it really serious, and it definitely showed when I was wrestling.
So you make it to the finals
Of sectionals?
at Pace University?
So yeah, sectionals, I pretty much I ran, not to sound like a jerk, but I ran through the first 3 rounds or whatever. I think I didn't have a match that lasted even the semis. I pinned the kid. And I don't want to leave out, like Greg said, Michael Giovanni was an assistant coach at that time, and he definitely helped me a lot. Huh?
Mike was assistant coach at Greeley?
My junior year. Yep. Greg's sophomore year. If you remember in Greg's interview, he talks about how that helped him with Grant Paswell a lot.
Yeah.
But
so Mike was working with Ken.
Mike was there, yeah, and that's Kaleo being a good guy in a sense, because he knew he was a Deagle guy, but he knew I needed a workout partner, right? So Mike was helping Greg with a lot of technique and stuff like that, but me and Mike wrestled every practice. That was my partner, and that had a lot to do with, my sophomore year as a coach, like I'm more defensive. Well, I like to think I'm pretty good at everything, but like I'm known to be good with my defense. As a 10th grader, I was hard to score on, but I would win a lot of matches like 2-1, 3-2, whatever. My junior year, I was winning matches like tech falls and things like that because I could get to my offense. And I think Mike had a lot to do with that. And I basically steamrolled it there to the section finals to wrestle Hoke.
Oh, so you wrestled Hoke in the finals. How was that match?
It's close. It was really close. I think Hoke, I think Hulk is an underrated guy because that year I ended up taking fourth in the state, and I beat guys worse at the state tournament than I beat him in the section finals. And at the time, they didn't have wild cards. So I think he was a guy he took third the year before. He took second his senior year. He's a guy that would have got in. I had to dig deep that match. I remember, and it had something to do a little too with Greg, where I was super happy that he won. But at that time, Greg ended up being the guy and being maybe one of the best guys in Greeley history. But at the time, I was the guy, and Greg was like my mentee in a sense. Like he was the younger guy that was, coming up with me. And the way that he dominated Grant in the finals there and got that pin and the whole place erupted, like I felt that pressure, because people were like, oh, Greg did that. If Ant loses, and there was no wild cards, right? So Greg would have been going up to the States, and the guy that he was following and the guy that was pushing him to work hard wasn't going to be going with him. That was a thought that definitely creeped in my mind. It was like, Jesus Christ, like I got to go out there and compete.
So you win the section title, then Burke follows it up at 2.
No, Burke didn't win that year.
Burke was the next year.
Burke won the next year, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, so I won 6-5. I don't really remember how it went. I think I ended up having 2 takedowns. He ended up having 1 or something, and maybe I got a ride out. I forgot how it went. Actually, I know for a fact it was 6-5 late. I was winning, and he got onto like a single, and he had it in the air. But I felt, and this sounds again a little cocky, and it's not a knock at Hoke, was a great wrestler, but I felt pretty comfortable. And if you were watching it in the stands, you're probably like, holy cow, this is close. But it's that weird feeling a wrestler has that coaches will never understand. Like, you could feel what's going on out there. Like, I'm sure Kaleo was like, but I felt good. I'm like, I got this. I'm okay here. And then, like, the buzzer rang, and, Hoke, lost, but took it like a man, really good guy. And I won, and I was happy. It was almost like, it was weird. It wasn't like a jump up and pump your fist in the air kind of moment, because I've been training so hard that I expected to win. But it was more of a relief, it was more of a relief. It was more like a burden off my shoulders. Like, thank God I won, because, I did all this work, and that's not the way to think. I think that affected my wrestling a little bit. When you think about the whole grand scheme of things, as a coach, I would never put that much pressure on it, but I put a lot of pressure on it.
So who did you work out with in the room? Did you work out and wrestle with Greg all the time, or?
No, me and Greg would like play around. Like, Greg was joking in his interview that I would wrestle him with no arms and stuff before practice. But
because I remember you being bigger than him.
Yeah, it was more my coaches. My junior year, it was me and Cole Giovanni would wrestle a lot. But my junior year, I would still put it on Burke pretty good too, even though he was bigger than me. So I would go with Burke, and I would put it on him. By my senior year, they brought in that guy, Jim Ryan or whatever his name was.
Yeah, James Ryan, yep.
James Ryan, nice guy. I think he's
at
Portchester. So it was the same thing. He took Mike's spot, but me and Ryan probably wrestled almost every practice. And at that time, Burke made a big jump. Burke was pretty freaking good and bigger than me. So Burke would probably get the edge on me at that point, but it was close. So it depended on how much weight I was cutting and how I felt that day, if I was wrestling with him or not. But I would probably wrestle with Burke twice a week and Ryan 3 times a week, but no other kids really.
Yeah.
So, Coach, you get up to states. Is it still the format that you have to make it to the semis to place?
No, you could lose. I lost in the quarters, so you could lose.
Were you at Nassau Coliseum?
That was,
or was that
2 years later. That was my freshman year in college. Was Nassau Coliseum. Okay. So my junior year is the only year it was in Buffalo. It was it was only up in Buffalo. And I'll never forget that weight cut. Like I said, I cut probably way too much weight, and that weight cut was brutal. And that bus ride going up there was torturous. Just sitting there, cutting weight. But they did the 12-man bracket back then because there was no wild card. So
someone's got to buy.
Yeah, I believe I had well, some people did, some people didn't. I think I had to buy into the quarters, where I lost this kid from Section 5, who ended up taking third. I lost him twice, and then which I'm not happy about. But I got him back eventually. But we could say that later, I guess. But he beat me 7-5, I believe. It was a pretty good match. And then he lost in the semis to my good friend Ryan Petrovich, who I'm still good friends with to this day. I was just talking to like 5 minutes ago. He lost to him, and then I beat a PSAL kid, like teched him. Then I
Truman?
I don't know where he was from. And then I beat some Section 8 kid 5-1 or something like that to place. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like a guy like Hoke would have, if he had the same road, he beats that kid too, probably, and he probably places.
It's interesting. That's interesting because we've talked about it too. Trying to get kids when they're wrestling not to overthink their match, and a way to get them to concentrate, because a lot of times like there could be 2 kids from section 11, 2 kids from section 8, or 3, or 2 kids from section 1 that could win the states. But
100%.
one of them or 2 of them or 3 of them aren't even going to get there because someone didn't win that final and someone didn't get the wild card.
Well, look
So
at
the
Jake
hardest
Logan,
match you
Jake
might
Logan,
have,
Jake Ferreira. I mean,
Yeah, Malcolm Allen.
Malcolm Allen. There's
some
so
of
many
the
examples. Quincy and Tyler this year.
Yeah.
the toughest match you might have, and people don't realize this, could be your section, and it could be harder than any match you had in the state.
100%.
And you know that's the
I think
the
what they
crazy
did
thing
with-
about
I think what they did for New York State wrestling, the way they do it now, and it's different than in other states because other states have 4 different divisions and they wrestle their own state tournaments, whatever. But the way New York did it, I think, is terrific. To have wild cards, fill the brackets, and 2 divisions is even okay too. Because
I love that. If we could change anything, I would change that. Maybe even make it bigger than 16-man, but combine it.
That would be fine.
I think that'd be cool. Just so you know who the real state champ is, and not to discredit a small school guy, because there's been some small school guys that would beat the big school guys. It's happened.
Troy Nickerson should have been a small school guy, but he opted up to the big school.
He was good, man. He was really good. But yeah, but what I wanted to mention too that you guys probably don't remember, DeBellis, you might remember this, but back then they had weighouts, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it wasn't like the day before stuff like way earlier. You had to weigh in the morning. So that Saturday or whatever, I weighed in the morning, made weight. And I was always very conscientious of what I was putting in my body. But John was really instrumental in this, where I would almost like starve myself during the day so I could weigh out and get out of there. But it's like the state tournament. He's like, dude, are you kidding? You need to eat. Like, put some food in your body. We'll figure it out. So I put a bunch of food in me, whatever. And I remember I was a different animal, you know, than maybe some kids. Like, I knew when my last match was over, I had my sweats and all that stuff sitting right by Kaleo. And when the match was over, I didn't go hug my dad or do anything like that. I grabbed my sweats, put all my stuff on, and started doing my cool down with my sweats on so my sweat would continue. From that point, I hopped in a car, went to a sports club, got a workout in there for like an hour, got all the weight off, weighed out, and then came and wrestled the next morning. So, you know, it was different. You know, it was probably dangerous, really, but like, you know, to expect a high school kid to be able to have that type of tunnel vision, I don't think you see that in many other sports. Like, there was nothing you wouldn't have told. Like, if my mom said, "Here's a cheeseburger," I'd be like, "Are you crazy? Get that away!" Like, it wasn't a thing, you know.
Yep, and I think a lot of kids, when I went to States, my mentality wasn't even close to that. I was happy to be there. I lost 2 matches. I was done. I was 1-2 barbecue, you know. So
yeah, well, but we had different experiences too. Like, I was lucky enough. You know, we're going to talk to Coach DeBellis in this series too, but Coach DeBellis is a great wrestler, section champ. But I was lucky enough to be in that club wrestling atmosphere. I was lucky enough to have people that were very like-minded to me. And, you know, I feel like I push harder than anybody. You know, I really do. I really feel like I push harder than anybody. And that's why I think I took my senior year so bad, because, you know, I felt like I did everything I was supposed to do.
Let's talk about your senior year.
So going in, so I take 4th. I ended up taking 4th my junior year. I actually won a match in the Conti semis there with the last second takedown also. And the ref hosed me. It was bad. I headlocked him. I really didn't headlock. It's so funny that headlocks come up like 3 times. But, like, I headlocked him, and I thought I had 5. So, like, I saw, like, Kaleo yelling and, like, my dad and John in the stands yelling. I'm like, I got this. Like, I think I'm up by 3. I'm holding, like, a headlock. And we come up to our feet, and the ref blows the whistle and goes stalemate neutral. I'm like, what? How did that happen? And now I'm looking at the clock, and there's like 10 seconds left, and I'm down by a point. So I end up getting the takedown like I'm a buzzer, and that was fun, you know. And I probably that match I celebrated a little bit. I might have got a little bit too much.
Now you're going for 3rd and 4th.
Yeah, I went for 3rd and 4th, and I lost that same jerk from Section 5. Actually, probably a nice kid, but I beat him in college, and it wasn't very close. But anyway, so that off season, my junior year going into my senior year, I was on pace to dominate a state title. I think I was going to every tournament we went to. I was dominating. I was killing everybody in the room at John's. It wasn't close. I went to this tournament that they still, I think, have national duels in Maryland or whatever. I went 9-1, and I lost to the kid from PA, and that's the only kid I lost to. You know, I beat the Jersey state champ. I beat a bunch of good kids. You know, at the time, they didn't really do national rankings like they do now, but I was ranked, you know, not very high. It was like 25 or 24 or something like that.
Wasn't your buddy Booth ranked as well?
Yeah, he was honorable mention.
Oh, he was honorable mention. Yeah, I don't know if Booth is watching this, but that's
He probably won't. He's probably doing something weird, you know, talking to himself or whatever. But so I put up a great season. I was really having a great off season. I felt good. you know, and people were saying the word that Gregor Gillespie was going to be up around my weight class started being a thing. And the people that are listening, Gregor Gillespie ended up being a 4-time NCAA All-American and NCAA champ, and he fights in the UFC now. And he's a freak, a great guy. It seems like a great guy. I've had a couple conversations with him, but really, really good wrestler. And at that time, people were like, you know, almost chalking that up that this was going to be a real match. Like, these two guys are killing it right now, and they both are like on pace to like hit. And I'll never forget the situation. I was at John's, and I was wrestling this kid, Larry Carrera, who's a Carmel kid.
Yeah, I remember.
Who, if Larry listens to this, I'm sorry, Larry, but I used to beat the tar out of. Like, it wasn't a thing. And so
Go Rams.
Go Rams. And I had my leg in, and I was running a power half on him in practice, right? And he went to like clear my leg, and I felt a pop in my knee. And I got up right away, because you know when that happens right away, it doesn't like get tight or anything. Like, you just don't know what's going on. Like, John heard the pop. It was loud, right? So I got up. I'm like, I think something happened to my knee. He's like, well, stop moving. We'll figure it out. Long story short, go get an MRI. I have a torn meniscus. And at the time, I wish I knew what I knew now, because my meniscus ended up tearing right away after anyways. Again, I tore my meniscus 3 times. I should have just got it shaved off. It would have been a 3 or 4 week recovery. I just would have had some arthritis when I'm older, which I'm going to have anyways. Instead, I got repaired because that's what the doctor recommended. Stupid, you know, and the doctor's not stupid. Like, he doesn't know that this is my life. Like, he doesn't know that this is my, you know, he's probably looking in the long run of my health and my well-being. And so I was out for 6 months or something like that. It was a long recovery, and that killed me. Like, that really killed me. That was hard for me. You know, like we talked about the Greg story when Burke was hiding under the bed at the camp and stuff. I went to that camp on crutches because John asked me to go. I would still go to every practice and be there. And I would do pull-ups, and I was doing whatever I could do. You know, I would do like hand fighting drills, anything I could do. And there was this guy, Mr. Flamio, who was a great guy for us, you know, back then. He had me doing like PT stuff that might not have been the best stuff. Like, you know, I would hold like a weight to my, like when I was done, I had a lot of scar tissue in my knee. Like, I couldn't bend it all the way, right? So I would like hold like a 80-pound weight on my chest and try to like crunch it down, kind of. Like, so like the weight would, like I would sit back onto my haunches, kind of. You know what I mean? It would like break the scar tissue up. Things like that, yeah. So like we would do stuff like that, and you know, if you watch any of my matches from my senior year, I couldn't really bend my right knee at all. You know, so I would do like a lot of drags and like things I never really hit. I just think because like my work ethic and you know, just I was stronger and tougher than a lot of the kids. Like in the section, I had no problem. You know, I didn't really have much of a problem, but I got hurt a bunch of times. I got re-hurt. We went to the Herrick's tournament, the first tournament of the year. It was round robin. I had 5 matches. And at the end of the tournament, my knee was the size of a volleyball. So I had to sit out for like 3 weeks there. Then I came back. We wrestled some Yonkers team, pinned the kid, but like wrestled like 3 or 4 more matches and got hurt again. You know, it just kept getting bad. And then that's another time we had a falling out with Kaleo when it was the tournament before divisionals. I'm like, just tell him I'm sick. My knee's banged up. I don't want everybody knowing how banged up my knee is. And he happened to say the other. But, you know, I still like Kukula was my buddy. We would still train together, but he was getting the better of me. He was 140, you know, and I was 145. He took second in the state that year. We would scrap. I was the only guy that could really go with him. But before I got injured, it wouldn't have been a thing between us at that point, you know. But I learned a lot that year. I learned a lot about like perseverance and being tough and fighting through stuff. You know, I tell this story, and John probably might not like that I'm going to bring this story up on this interview right now. But to this day, he says it's the worst beating he's ever given a high school kid. And it's my senior year, you know, and I was feeling, I think, pretty good at the time. And there was this kid, Blaze Flamio, Mr. Flamio's son, who was ranked first in the section at 130, I believe, or something like that, 30 or 35. And I was 45, and I beat Blaze. I was bigger, you know. And John told me my mission, and John's changed a lot, you know, but John told me my mission was to make Blaze cry at practice. And I just wasn't that guy, right? Which maybe I should have been a little bit in ways, right? And I kind of was when I was wrestling people that weren't, you know, my club mates or teammates, but we were wrestling, and I took him down a bunch of times, but he didn't cry. And John at the end of practice goes, "You failed your mission. Now I'm going to make you cry." I said, "Okay." And I do love John to death. He's done a lot of great to me, but he's never broke me, and it never will happen. And that's something I pride myself on. Like, I just won't let that happen. And we went for 60 minutes. We went for an hour straight. And he was beating me up, you know, all sorts of things that I won't mention on this interview.
Holding your mouth shut.
Yeah, it's like all that. I'm not gonna lie. I was throwing punches, I was biting him and stuff, and of course he wasn't doing those things back to me. Like I was trying to kill him.
He was
And
also 250 pounds.
yeah, and I was a sucked out, limp-legged 145-pounder. But it got down. I'll never forget it. And John, as crazy as it was, we can't do that as high school coach, and I don't say I recommend that for everybody. But for me, it did a lot for me. It really did. Because when I went to college and things of that nature after, I would think back to that workout. And I'd be like, I can make it through this no problem. Like, this is nothing compared to that. And it got down to like the last, like it was 60 minutes in, and John's like, just cry. I know you want to cry. And my body was shaking. Like I was like convulsing pretty much. And I said, I'm not going to stop until I get a takedown. And he looked at me like I was crazy. And Mr. Flamio was like, John, and Mr. Flamio was a tough dude too. And Mr. Flamio was like, John, I think you guys should stop. And John like looked at him, shook his head, and I got in on a double. There's no way I could have finished this takedown, John. No way in hell. And I think John saw I might have been on the verge of death and just kind of said, here you go, and gave me the takedown. So, but that was, it was my senior year was up and down, man. And that was like a couple weeks before divisionals.
So you make it through the section tournament. You end up at states. And talk about your state tournament.
So
if you want to.
No, that's fine. It's real. So out of all those years, like I said, I cut weight a little bit too much. My senior year probably was the worst of the batch. In my psyche, I was thinking, we had John Bowman up at 152, who was a really good wrestler too. We both were returning section champs. We both were returning 4th place in state. So I'm like, I'm not healthy right now. I don't know if I could go up there and compete with him, and really hindsight, you wish they had a wild card too, right? Because if they had a wild card, then I definitely would have done it. Because we both would have went to states and we both would have been all state at that weight class. And I think if I was at 52, I think I would have been healthier. I think that would help me recover from my knee injury a lot better and things of that nature. But I decided to cut really hard. And in the section finals, I had this kid, Matt Shakin, who I'm still friendly with today. He was a really good kid, but another club kid, right? And it was always a little awkward. And I only beat him 3-1, and I don't think anybody in that gym or whatever thought that was going to be a match, but it was. Matt wrestled hard and I was tense, and my body I wasn't reacting to the cut as I should have, and all of that stuff. But then we go to the state tournament. Cut was really hard again. It was really bad. It's that one, which to me, it's my discipline, right? Like I probably should have been. I did it a couple times that year, so I probably should have had it down to a better system, right? But I crashed down at the end, made weight, but I was not good. Like I was not feeling good. I didn't look right. Like if you watch any of those videos from my senior year, I look sickly. It just wasn't a good cut. I had to buy. I had this kid, Michael Chairs, in the quarters, who was only a sophomore, but a good wrestler. I think he took second at Easterns or won Easterns. He won Eastern States, but it wasn't what it was now. It was just a good tournament. But I knew he was. He was on my radar. But again, nobody in that place was picking him to beat me. And I took a single. I'll never forget this either. And I was dead. Like I don't get gas, but my body was dead. I was tired. Like I just wasn't reacting the way I should. And I got to a single, and instead of trying to stay on the legs, like we always tell the kids stay on the leg, I rushed and went up to the hip. And I'll never forget, he did like a wizard throw kind of. He went wizard and he hip tossed me in my back. Ended up going up on me like at that time like 5-1 or whatever. And the final score ended up being 7-4. And I remember like just being crushed. Like to me, and it shouldn't be like that, but it was like a death in the family. Like I was crushed, like absolutely crushed. And shook his hand. I handled that like a sport, I guess. I shook his hand, did what I was supposed to do, but I went to the back and I cried my eyes out. I was so upset because everything I've been doing since I was a 7th grader was for that moment right there, or a moment 2 rounds later, really. My junior year wasn't as bad because it was my first trip and placing was fun. My senior year, it was win the state tournament or nothing. And again, that shouldn't be your psyche, right? And so I was like a death in the family. And I remember this kid, Mike Martinez, who was really good too, but he was a small school guy. He got upset in the quarters also. And we both were 145-pounders. And he left. We were in the back. He's like, I'm not wrestling back. He left. And I remember being like heartbroken. I'm like, I can't not wrestle back. But to this day, other than maybe the Marinelli match, which really wasn't a regret because I look up to him, this match was my biggest regret in my high school career because I should have took 3rd without a problem, and I went into that match and I was winning 1-0 late. He picked neutral because I guess he thought I was going to ride him. So I was winning 1-0 with like 30 seconds left, and I was just doing the bare minimum to win. Wasn't taking any shots. I just didn't want to be there. Like I had no interest in being there. I was so upset. And they said the toughest guy in the tournament takes 3rd. And I wasn't being the toughest guy. Like, I was just so crushed from my quarterfinals loss. And he headlocked me. He headlocked me for 5. Second time in the freaking tournament. And I go to my back and I fight off. I'm not going to get pinned. I fight off. I get to my belly and we go out of bounds. And I remember this like yesterday. I look at the clock and there's like 11 seconds left. I'm losing 5-1. I'm like, what did I just do? Like, what did I just do? And I escaped 5-2. And like, I tried to throw him on the buzzer and that's it. Match over. And that's my high school career, right? And lost it, you know, act like a baby, things that I would get mad at our kids for doing, you know, because it's not the way you should be. And I left, and I remember just leaving the building, and I ran far into Albany. I don't know where I was gone, right? And yeah, and my dad was like trying to get me and call me, whatever. And I'll never forget this. He finally found me, or I probably answered his text to tell him I was okay, but like we finally ended up meeting up. And my dad pushed me to a sense, but he never, it was never over the line. You know, it was never over the line. He was always good like that. And I remember seeing him see me and see the look on his face. And it wasn't disappointment. It was sad that I was sad. You could tell how upset he was that I was upset. And he tried to like talk me down and be like, "And you worked as hard as anybody I know. Like, you know, it is what it is. Things happen." And I couldn't, like at that time as an 18-year-old, I couldn't gauge it. You know, I just couldn't. And it was bad. Like I was messed up about that for like 2 or 3 months. And then I finally started to like, you know, say, all right, what's next? So that wasn't very fun.
So what's next?
You think that pushed you? Yeah, you think that pushed you into more desire at the college level? I mean, 100%. What do you think that tournament, that your senior year, disappointment in your senior year after, you know, you come off that junior season, you're like stoked, and then to have that happen. And it sounds like, again, there was injury issues. And with any injury issue, there's more doubt of the injury and not trust of the injury, that you can kind of doubt yourself. And it could have been that. But, you know, again, you wrestled tough. And one of the key themes that you're always talking about is you are mentally tough and you out tough people in the room. So you have the desire, you have the toughness, and you have the ability, which is a deadly combination for the other wrestlers. So that senior season in States, how did that drive you to perform in college and the college process?
Oh, it drove me a lot. And I don't want to use the injury as an excuse either. Like I wasn't my best, right? But even at that level that I was at, I should have won the quarters. I should have won the semis. And Gregor Gillespie probably would have kicked my butt at the version that I was in, you know, because Gregor killed that kid in the finals. It wasn't even a thing. So, you know, I think if I had you guys as my coach, you know, and me and you two and maybe a Khalid or, you know, I had John, but John was the club coach. He cared a lot about me, but, you know, he had a lot of other guys to care about. He wasn't my high school individual one-on-one coach talking to me every single day. I think you guys would have knocked that crap out of my head a little bit because I was probably thinking about my knee too much, right? And I was probably not resting it the proper way. And I probably wasn't dieting the right way and doing things that I think we would have been on top of if we were in that situation. Like, you know, Adam would always joke about when he was in high school, like, "Oh, I'm going to be better than you," you know, but being funny. I'm like, "You better be better than me. You have me. I didn't have me," you know, and I think that has something, I think that's real though, because I made a lot of mistakes that year. And I think now as a coach, I make sure that our kids don't do the same things, you know, and it wasn't a mistake of not working hard. It was a mistake of being kind of ignorant on certain things. But yeah, so that summer when I went back to wrestling pretty quick. I actually went to senior nationals, but I went 160 because I was cutting so much weight. I couldn't do it anymore. And I lost first rounds and the kid took third in the tournament. And this is another John story that he's not going to like, but it's true. So John was great though. John flew all the way out to Ohio with me. We were there. He warmed me up, everything. And we went, how they did it back then is when you lost first round, you're done for the day. Your wrestle back would be day 2. So we went back. And at the time I already knew I was going to Hofstra, and I wasn't a big recruit. I was like a recruited walk-on because Hofstra was really good at the time. You know, I wasn't getting scholarship. And Tom Ryan called John, and he goes, "You know, Anthony's on deck on mat 3, and I don't see him." And John's like, "Oh, shit." So we booked it to arena. The kid was still there, but they already, like, disqualified me. And the kid was still there, so they called him to the head table. I'm like, "You could still wrestle this match, but we did disqualify him, so you could take that victory instead." And the kid took that.
Oh, that's soft.
So that's my senior year was not good. There's just no fun in it. But
So,
after that, I kept training. I kept working hard. My knee started getting a lot better. I think like that scar tissue that was in there started to like break up, and I was able to get more mobility, and I was feeling basically back to myself. Going to practices, I felt fine. And that's when John Jay started doing those Monday open mats. I was going there and wrestling with that coach, Pat, not Pat McCabe, but Pat. And all that stuff, and it was great. And then when I got to Hofstra, I had a point to prove because we were really good. Hofstra was really, really good at the time. And back then they did cuts. So when you were a freshman, they gave you a literal gray shirt, right? And if you end up making it through, you would get the Hofstra gear, whatever that may have been. So that was like for a month or so. And I remember killing all the non-superstar recruits in the room in every aspect of the way, whether it was in the runs, whether it was in the lifts, whether it was in whatever. Like, we had a 6 a.m. workout. I would not be a minute late. I was there. I just loved it. And I wanted the opportunity. And I saw those guys that were really good. Coach Marino probably knows these guys because he's a Hofstra guy. But, I saw the John Massas and the Mike Patroviches and all these guys. And I'm like, I want to be like those guys. Like, they're awesome. Like, Chris Weidman, UFC champ now, all these things. Like, I saw these guys. I'm like, I wish I could be like those guys. So I don't know if I had the athletic ability of some of those guys, but my drive was there. I wanted to be that guy. And I think that helped me a lot.
well, you had a very good college career. You were the captain of Hofstra your senior year. You wrestled up probably 2 or 3 weights. You didn't have to cut any weight with your senior year. You were a scholarship athlete at the end.
I was a scholarship athlete, yeah. But that was all at the end. So, I mean, I like telling this other story too. I know I'm the interviewee, so I shouldn't be blabbing as much. But
You can do whatever you want.
I think I hope the kids watch this and they listen to this, and the parents listen to it too, because it's real, And when Tom Ryan was the coach, I did everything in my power to be a great wrestler. Like, I would work my butt off. I tried as hard as I could. I went 16-6 that year at Opens. I won an Open tournament, which is way harder than taking second in New York State, winning a college Open. Like, I went there and did that, beat a bunch of state champs and guys of that nature. Tom Ryan was really into how I was wrestling. And when he went to Ohio State, he told me I could go with him. But when he left, I saw all the older kids stop going to class and stuff. At that time, they're 2 or 3 years in, these kids. They have credits. They got GPAs and all that stuff. I had nothing. So I was already not a good student when I was in high school. I had a huge IEP. I struggled with a lot of stuff. It didn't come easy to me. Like, wrestling did, and that's a misconception too. I was always a tough, scrappy kid, athletic in a way, good conditioning. But it took me a while to learn and understand moves. Like, it didn't like click like that for me at all. And so he left. These kids stopped going to class. So, of course, being an idiot, I stopped going to class as well. I never missed a practice. I just thought, they don't have to go to class. Why do I have to go to class? And this guy, Tom Shiflett, comes in. He takes over. And Tom doesn't know me from a hole in the wall. As far as he knows, it was 4th in state junior year. He doesn't really know much of my credentials. He doesn't know my work ethic. He could have looked at my freshman year, but I guess he really didn't too much. So he didn't care. He was more concerned about, getting in there and getting started. So I got a letter from like the provost or whatever you call that, saying that I was dismissed from the school. So I'm like, holy cow, this is not good. And my dad, as much as I love my dad, and he's right for this, but he's strict, and I didn't want to tell him that. That was scary for me. I was like, Jesus, I can't tell him this. So I told my mom, and me and my mom were talking, and she's like, in the letter, it says, if you write an appeal, you can get back in the fall. So that whole summer I was training. I wrote the appeal. I thought I was going to be back in the fall. Wasn't too worried about it. Even the guy said that I had a 99% chance to be back in the fall. Literally said 99%. So I'm like, I'm good. I'm not too stressed. They told me to call back like August 15th, August 16th, whatever it was, to see the results of like the whatever it was. I called. They said, sorry, man, you didn't get back in. You're dismissed. And I remember that feeling. It's like when it rains and pours. First senior year, then I had a good freshman year, but now I'm in this and I did it to myself. There's nobody else to blame but me. But the crazy thing is that's the best thing that ever happened to me, ever. To this day in my life, that is the best thing that ever happened to me. I got kicked out, and at that time I was coaching. I was coaching at John's already, basically running a lot of practices with them. And my mom called John to tell him before she told my dad, because I was at practice and she thought that John, if my dad tried to kill me, John could protect me, kind of thing. And it turned out to be both of them giving me a good earful in the parking lot. And I'm not gonna lie, I cried like a baby because I felt, and it wasn't that I was upset that I was out of Hofstra. I was upset that I was out of Hofstra, but to see the because I made some good friends. Those were my best friends now too. So it was tough, but to see the disappointment in my dad's eyes and John's eyes, even in that situation, right, crushed me. I'm like, I really messed up. Like, I really, really messed up. It hurt. Like that was another bad one where it really got me. And my dad didn't talk to me for like 2 months, something like that. And that was it. It's not like he beat me up or, took everything away from me. He just was so disappointed with me. He just wouldn't conversate with me. Like, that was it. Like, I just wasn't there, So I knew at that point I had to take things in my own hands. And as like a 19 or 20-year-old, who wasn't used to that, I was always a tough kid, but my mom and dad did a lot for me. I was spoiled in a sense. I had to take things into my own hands. So I enrolled myself into Westchester Community College. And at that point in my life, I've never gotten an A, ever in my life. I was in 5 classes. I got A's in all 5 of them. And I was taking the train down to the New York Athletic Club to train because I had nobody to train with. And I was wrestling with a bunch of old Russians in Manhattan. I had no idea how to travel, use, trains and subways and stuff at that point in my life. A little bit, maybe halfway through that, my dad kind of saw what I was doing and he reconciled with me in a sense where he started driving me down there and we got closer. We would stop at like a pizza place on the way back and we were fine. I think he saw how much I cared and he knew that I felt bad about the mistake I made. But Bill Shortfager reached out to me. I was coaching at John Jay Cross River that year, working at the club, doing all these things. So the spring of that year, I got readmitted into Hofstra. I had to get all A's that spring semester and the summer semester to be eligible the next year to wrestle. And I did that. And then, like you said, I ended up being captain of the team and, graduated grad school with a 3.6 GPA.
So I'd like to say something.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, something you said earlier about wrestling with John in the room and you would never let him break you. Mm-hmm. Apparently he broke you in the parking lot. You broke him.
Yeah, it's true. Right. I was broke.
Number 2, this is important. This is so important for the kids, and I hope every kid watches this because I say it when I coach my baseball players. I'm sure I've said it in the wrestling room when I was coaching, and it's a saying. I don't know if I made it up, not the first half, but the second half. There's always a saying that a smart man learns from his mistakes. And then I go on to say, but an even smarter man can learn from the mistakes of others. Yeah. So as a coach, we take it in to the mistakes that you're talking about, not going to class, not doing what you need to do, not following A, B, and C, and you got booted and you thought you were getting back in. And that story is so important because, again, it means something to you. And there's no end. There's no, final destination. It's just another fork in the road. You could have carried on sniveling and not owning up to it, and you would have gone down a different path. But you did the right thing. You took a different path. And eventually down that road, there's going to be another fork in the road. And it comes down to your personal responsibility and the choices you make. And you got to make those right choices. And that was something that you learned from big time. And that's an important lesson that I hope these kids take out of this, as opposed to, Coach Tortora messed up in school. You can see it that way, but it takes a real mature perspective to look at it as being one of the most important things that's ever happened to you in your life.
I think the most. I mean, other than getting married and the baby and things of that nature, for my personal growth, I think that was the most.
Right, but even further, right?
If I didn't get back at the Hofstra, I never would have met Kara.
Exactly. That's what I was just going to say. What year did you meet her? And if you didn't do that, your life's a totally different direction.
It's crazy. It's true. And I attribute that, Coach, to 2 things too, which is funny because you brought up these points, is my family and wrestling. Wrestling's done so much for me in my life, but if I didn't care so much about wrestling, I don't know if I would have took that same drive of getting all A's in all those classes and doing those things. And on the flip side, like you asked earlier, how close me and my family are, knowing how disappointed and how hurt they were, there's always external factors. Like I wanted it for me, but I wanted to make them proud too. I didn't want to be that person that, they could say my son's this time the third he gave up. And I was, like I said, I was spoiled. I'm a Chapel Court kid. I'm a Chapel Court kid, and Chapel Court kids can be tough. They could be great. They could be anything they want to be in the world. But we had better circumstances than a lot of other people do, and I took advantage of that, instead I didn't take advantage of that. I'm sorry. I took advantage of the fact that I thought I could do whatever I wanted to do without putting the work in. I didn't take advantage of the opportunities I had, in a sense. Some I did. I worked my ass off wrestling, but, I let it bite me in the ass, kind of being spoiled. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I say the same thing, Coach. There's a fast way and a slow way to learn. Fast way is learn from others. Slow way is to keep on making mistakes. What if you watch?
Every day you're learning. Every day.
We should be
that's
learning
the way
every
you
day.
need to be. Yeah.
So, Coach, we're getting deep into this interview now, and we talked about your college, we talked about your high school. Now you're a premier coach in Section 1 in New York State. You know, some people would argue that you are the best coach in New York State. I am one of those people. So, Coach Marino is also one of those people. Instead of saying what is your best and least best memory of wrestling, I think we went over a lot of those. Let's talk about your coaching career. And what is your favorite memory from your coaching career so far?
That's tough because there's so many angles. We've talked about this before. You know, I could go so many routes. The typical answer that people were probably expecting is the picture behind Coach Marino, our first and only state title, and Aaron Wall.
Second, we have two.
Oh, and Izzy, yeah. Well, Izzy, that's the thing though. Like, they're all so different. I'm so proud of so many of them. You know, they're just different. Like, there's so many things that Isabella Garcia did that made me so proud as a coach. Like, this year on paper, we did not have the year that I would like to have. But Izzy made me proud. All of them, but Izzy like would put herself in that list with things that she just did this year, right? You can't deny Aaron Walk. I mean, man, if people listen to his interview and Steve Walk's interview, that kid did everything in his power to get where he got, and he deserved that, and it was unbelievable. The reason that's hard for me to say that's clear number one is because he did it so well. It was almost anticlimactic. Like, he was just so dominant where it's like I expected that. You know, so it wasn't like, oh, I can't believe he did that, so I'm so happy. It was like, that's Aaron Walk. He's a savage. You know, so like, unbelievably proud of him, but like, it wasn't that aha moment of like, this is unbelievable. I don't, you know, it's just different. And then the Jacob Ferreira story, I always say, is very, very much up there because at the end of the day, you know, for the parents that are listening, I really hope that they understand this because I think Coach Marino and Coach Bellis both would attest that this is true. At the end of the day, we want our kids to be the best version of themselves, you know, 110%. And I think Aaron Walk winning a state title, even if he loses that match, he's still going to be the best version of himself. He's a great kid doing great things. For Jacob to be able to articulate that after a loss of that magnitude in the state finals was a very proud moment for me. And it's hard to top that moment because that's heartbreak, right? And I told you my story, right? When my heart broke, I acted like a baby. I ran into the streets and things that like I said, things I would not as a coach be too happy about. I would feel for him, you know, but I'd be like, you got to get up. You got to be a man. You got to go for third, or you got, you know, come back and get your cool down, or whatever it may have been, right? I wouldn't have said, go run away. Don't run away from your problem. You know, it happened. You got to deal with it. And Jacob dealt with it better than I think a grown man would. And in that moment, I was like, holy cow, Jacob Ferreira is going to be good. For the rest of his life, that kid has the mentality to do some great things. And it made me feel like we did our job. You know, it really did. And I felt that with Aaron too. Like, speaking to Aaron now, he worked out with Michael Machado. They did a run today. And just being a leader 2 years out, like, I couldn't be more proud of Aaron Walk. I couldn't be more proud of Matt Schreiber. Like, the way that you know, where that kid's come. Unbelievable. Like, great wrestler for us. But some of those big wins he had, Blood Round his senior year, it was just tough, and I was very proud of him there. And, you know, some things Izzy did, proud of her. You know, Scotty Wims, you know, coming through the Wrestlebacks our first year out there, you know, awesome. You know, Brock giving his medal to that kid that technically placed higher than him, I was very proud of him. It's something I never even would have thought of. You know, these kids are showing a lot of maturity in these things. It's hard for me to pick one, but like I said, that Jacob one is just different because the way he was able to grasp such a heartbreaking loss really showed me something.
Forget about the say it or whatever. That doesn't really matter. I want to ask one more question. Being that you are kind of sought after in the section, like a lot of guys come up to you, you coach a lot of the Fox Lane kids at the club, you've coached a lot of the kids in Section 1, you know, Tyler Albus, Quincy Downs, all these guys are all, you know, I mean, they all come to you and you're one of their coaches. What drives you to, you know, to stay or to come back to Greeley and coach? Like,
I don't know if you remember this, D, but so Coach Sabels is the man. I mean, we're going to interview Coach and we'll highlight that a lot in that, I believe. But Coach DeBellis didn't really know me well. He knew me as a high school wrestler. He knew I was a Greeley guy. I came back to like one high school practice, but right when I graduated college, Coach DeBellis reached out to me immediately. And it shows like no ego. Some coaches don't want that young guy in the room, maybe changing things up. And Coach DeBellis was all about it. Him and Pete Jacobson both called me around the same time. But like Coach Marino said, it's Greeley. That's where I wanted to see Greeley get good, and I think we've achieved it. I want to do more, but placing top 10 in the state 2 years and top 10 in the Eastern States and having 20 or so all section guys and all these all state wrestlers, we're there, but I don't know if you remember this, Coach, but I told you the first year we were coaching that I'm not leaving until we win a section title, and I will never leave until we win a section title. And if that never happens, then I'm never leaving. If it does happen, I might stay. But
what do you mean you might stay?
I'll stay. But there is times where I'm not going to lie, Coach.
Sabotage the stay.
There's times.
Don't lose points.
We're lucky that we've had great parents, great support system, great kids. But there's times that I do get frustrated, right? Like, and it's not. It's the fact that you're saying, yeah. It's like I'm coaching all these Fox Lane kids. Like everybody's in awe of PJ Duke, who's an unbelievable wrestler. But I've been coaching that kid since the second grader. And I'm up in the stands watching him absolutely dominate. It's not about my moment. It's PJ's moment. I was so happy for him. I'm so happy for Aaron. And DeBellis knows me well enough, and Coach Marino, I don't look for them to tell people that I'm one of their coaches and these things. I try to stay in the shadows. I never interrupt another coach coaching or do anything of that nature. But I know we could do it, right? If PJ Duke trusts me and AJ Kovacs trusts me and Quincy Downs and Tyler Albus, I would hope that our kids would be fully 100% bought in if that's what they want to do, right? There's some kids that might want to be a seasonal wrestler. That's perfectly fine. But don't lie to me and tell me you want to be a section state champ, because if you want to be that person, I'll give you the recipe to do that, and Coach DeBellis will as well. And Aaron Walk wanted it. We gave him the recipe, and he absolutely dominated. Jacob Frere was a 500 wrestler as a freshman, wanted it, wasn't supposed to be who he was, lost in the state finals to a top 5 kid in the country. Matt Shriver was not a good youth wrestler, wanted it. 2-time section champ, 2-time all-state. Like, we could get it done here, but don't lie to me and act like you want to be that person and not want to go through the trenches, because it's not going to be easy. Anything worth having is hard. So if you want to make that commitment, let's do it. And I'm a call away. I could be at the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning with you if you want me to.
You need the desire.
You need it. And I can't give it to you.
Yeah.
But it hurts a little bit when and they all get excited, and it's fun, right? They all get excited at sectionals and states, and they're like, I know that guy. You didn't know that guy in July and June when you were missing in action, and they were sweating in a 110-degree wrestling room. There's no secret to this, so it does get frustrating when I'm happy for Quincy and Tyler, really happy. Like you saw me when Quincy won that semifinals match, my brain blew up. Such a good kid. But at the same time, it's like I'm giving him my sweat and tears, this kid, in July. Where's all my Greeley guys? And that does frustrate me a little bit, for sure.
They got to do it.
It is, as a coach. As a coach, it is frustrating to see that you believe in them so much more than they believe in themselves. And it's hard to sometimes bring that to the kid, like, see it. And whether they're just not mature enough, they don't want the same thing, but you can see the talent in a kid. And if they don't have that desire, that's really tough. Because, again, like we said, we don't want to look back and have the regrets. And we don't want them to have those regrets. And we know, because we've been through it, and life is, everybody's best teacher. And again, we're trying to bring that to them before.
Do it early.
Yep. A little
and
bit.
I'd rather honesty.
Do it early.
We might change. Changing is fine, right? Changing is fine. If you're a freshman, listen, my thing is this, and this is a problem with me too, because I did send a nice email out during the season and stuff. When you're there from November to February, commit or don't do it. That's a real thing to me, because we get paid for this, but we don't get paid substantially, and that's not gonna. No coaches do. It's a side job. It's something that we love to do. It's not about the money, right? And
you break down the hours. If you
break down the hours, it's insane. And I have a 5-month-old at home. I have a new house. I coach at the club. I coach all these other people, and I love the Greeley and I love the kids. But from November to February, I'm 110% committed to that program. I was there 2 days after my son was born at practice, and Kara gave me a couple of dirty looks, but I was there, and because I love it and I love the kids and I want to give them all I have. Right? If I'm willing to give you all I have from November to February, that's the least you could do back. Don't join a team if you're not willing to commit for the portion of the season. Off-season stuff's another conversation, right? And be honest with me. If you want to be a state champ, you probably should be doing off-season wrestling. If you don't, fine. But you sign up for that Greeley wrestling team from November to February, you should be at every practice at every event unless a family emergency or something crazy comes up. No ifs, ands, or buts. Like, and that culture and that idea really bothers me.
Well, I think what you guys are doing is fantastic. First of all, with these interviews, a lot of people are doing nothing, and they're not even willing to do anything. You guys are doing this to hopefully bring it to the team, get it out there, because again, it's in your blood and it's something you need. And if you're not on the mat, this is a way to bring you to the mat. The other thing, you mentioned it, and I don't know if you're posting it in the school or you have a team site or whatever, how you did the all Greeley team at each weight class. And, you know, stuff like that is awesome. And to put that out there, so some kid now in the Pee-wees is like, I want to get there. I want to be on that list. And someone who's now a wrestler at Greeley should want to be on that list. And if not, be on the honorable mention list. And if not on the honorable mention list, that kid beat me out right there. And that's why I wasn't there. I mean, that's what it's all about. I mean, they get a chance to represent their community, their school, their parents, their families, and themselves. And there's nothing like that. It's, you know, the competition, you can't, it's hard to create that in the classroom. And athletics, as I say, is an extension of the classroom. But nobody knows and sees your grades to the test unless you tell them. But when you're out there on that mat behind me right there, people see your grade. They know your grade because the referee is going to raise your hand or he's not.
It's true.
And it's pass fail. Yep.
I love it.
And
I love that idea. It's life. It's either you do it or you don't, you know. D, before you wrap up though, I just want to make sure that I say to all the people that really helped me, because it wasn't me, right? Like maybe like we say it's like ingrained in you a little bit. Like I think it was ingrained in Aaron, Jacob, and Matt, but maybe not Matt as much, where he kind of learned it and then he kept it. You know, now Matt loves wrestling, so it shows that you kind of can build it into somebody a little bit. Where Aaron and Jacob, Aaron was always pretty tough and successful, but he always had that, you know, and then Jacob wasn't as successful, but he always had that, you know, he's always a bulldog. He was always tough, you know. Maybe I was more in that category, but, you know, if it wasn't for my dad driving me to practice and doing all these things, I never would have been able to be as, you know, the family is important in this sport. It's hard. It's hard to do by yourself. And, you know, if it wasn't for my dad doing all that, I wouldn't be who I am now. Forget as a person, you know, as a coach or a wrestler, or any of that. So that's, I mean, there's nobody as crucial as him. My mom was always supportive and great, and my sisters were always supportive and great. And, you know, my mom has watched almost all of these interviews because she, you know, I'm a mama's boy and she loves her little boy. So she's watching these interviews, like they're supportive. You know, she don't know what the heck we're talking about half the time, but she just wants to hear the interviews. And then into coaches, you know, and teammates, you know, Greg Ironfrank, kind of like what, you know, I love Greg. To this day, he's a great guy. And kind of to Jacob's point, what he said about Aaron and Matt, you know, Greg made me better because Greg was ready to take it to the next level, and I had to keep going. You know, I had to keep up with what he was doing. I couldn't let him, you know, I was the older guy. I couldn't let him say, hey, I'm going to outdo you now. You know, I'm going to go more practices than you are. I'm going to want to sprint a little faster than you. I couldn't let that happen. And if it wasn't for a guy like Greg, maybe I wouldn't have been as vicious and as driven as I was, right? And then to round it off, the coaches, right? Kaleo getting me into it and sticking by me in those early years was imperative. I think that's the right word. And, you know, John, to this day, still mentors me in ways. I mentor him sometimes too, but, you know, we go back and forth. But he's instrumental in my coaching because a lot of stuff I take off of him, straight up. You know, I change it a little here and there, but like you know, Iowa style practice when I first started coaching, I was stealing. You know, I think that's what any good coach does. And I still steal. Every once in a while, he'll show something like, man, that's interesting. I like that. You know, or he'll say something that's a little like profound to me. I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. And then last but not least is Coach DeBellis, Coach Marino, those guys. Coach Marino, you know, I student taught with him. He was a great teacher to me when I was in high school. He always had my back. And he's kind of showed me how to be a little bit more even keel, you know, where you need to understand a little bit more and not just bite down the bullet all the time and be so 100%. And, you know, coaching wise, there might be nobody like Coach DeBellis that has, you know, had the impact on me. You know, everybody likes to say, I think most people know now that's DeBellis and me, you know, but people will bust his chops and be like, Tortora this, Tortora that, Tortora this, because they see me doing it, right? They see me on the mat and all that stuff. But I wouldn't be able to be me if it wasn't for Coach DeBellis, right? For multiple reasons. For one, the way that he taught me how to treat the kids and, you know, be able to make them laugh, but be serious at the same time and that stuff. And how to enjoy it more maybe and find love in it. And really, if you have love in wrestling, I think that's going to make you more successful. And all the stuff that he does with the parents, for the people that are watching this and they like to call me head coach, I don't do any of that. Coach DeBellis lets me coach. I don't do any of that. That is 100% Coach DeBellis. Emailing the alumni, emailing the parents, making sure we have the warm-ups. If we need new mats, getting new mats. All of that. Getting the mats out before practice starts. I'm not there. I'm coming up from the Bronx. So if it wasn't for Coach DeBellis, I wouldn't be able to do what I do. So I think that needs to be said, and hopefully it's understood. Because I know guys are just kidding, but when they say stuff like that, it kind of annoys me because, they don't realize what Coach DeBellis has sacrificed for Greeley wrestling and will continue to do so going forward. So that's everybody, but it's not just, it takes a village, as Coach DeBellis would say.
Well, very much appreciated, but without you, we're not who we are. So
goes every way, I guess.
We're very fortunate. No, listen, these guys.
Teamwork to make the dream work.
That's right, baby. All right, well, that's a wrap. Coach, great job, and see you on the next one.